All right, everybody, welcome to BO Boys for Sunday, April 23rd. F it, it's a raw feed. We're doing it live. I'm Clayton.
Yeah, I'm Pat. And Clayton, that is not the only name I'm going to say right now because we have a guest. We have our horror expert, horror correspondent, the man who is hashtag horror lifestyle. He's holding up Videodrome, the book. That's how horror lifestyle this man is. He is here from the New Flesh podcast. The co-host of the New Flesh podcast, Brett, is here. Thank you for joining us and welcome.
Thank you so much. It is an absolute honor to be here. I've got my late night DJ smooth voice on, trying to keep the wife asleep, keep the dog downstairs. I don't want him coming up here interrupting the raw feed. So yeah.
I told my wife that she needs to keep it down, whatever she's doing.
We're recording. Please,
we're recording.
My mic picks up everything.
And this is not just me and Clayton, which is always a big show. We've got the co-host of the New Flesh here to talk about Evil Dead Rise and the state of horror as of today. Yes. So let's get into it. Clayton, could you give us an official plow for this weekend of Friday, April 21st, 2023?
Yes, number one, the Super Mario Brothers movie made $58.2 million, down only 37%. It lost 21 theaters. It's at $434.3 million in its third weekend. Number two, a newbie, Evil Dead Rise made $23.5 million in its first frame. Number three, another newbie, Guy Ritchie's The Covenant made $6.2 million in its first weekend. Number four, John Wick Chapter 4 made $5.7 million, down only 29%. It's at $168.8 million in its fifth weekend. And number five, Air made $5.5 million, down 29%. It's hemorrhaging theaters, though. It's lost 684 of them. It's at $41.7 million in its third frame. Now, I think I'm going to go all the way to 10 here because number 6, we got Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, made $5.4 million, down 28%. Lost 364 theaters. It's at 82.1 million in its fourth weekend. Number 7, The Pope's Exorcist, made $3.3 million, down 63%. It's at 14.9 in its second weekend. And number 8, Renfield, oh my goodness, $3.1 million, down 61%. It actually added 3 theaters. That must be a mistake. It made $13.6 million in its second weekend. And number 9, Beau is Afraid, the A24 Ari Aster joint, made $2.7 million. That's a plus 746%. It added 961 theaters. So this baby went wide. It's at 3.1 million in its second frame. And number 10, a Crunchyroll, Shizumi is $1.6 million, down 68%. It's $8.4 million cume after 2 weekends. Rounds out our top 10.
Wow. All the way to 10. That is where we're at the box office right now, where there are enough movies of note that we can't just do a 5 plow anymore. We may have to make a 10 plow a regular feature. So Clayton, you gotta get your endurance up and run up the sides of mountains, whatever you need to do, because you might be going to 10 every single week.
Well, I'm going to run around that track at the Lincoln Square AMC that supposedly exists now, if you heard about it.
That was stunning. That was a stunning tweet that a friend of ours sent us earlier today. There was a racetrack. Did you know this, Brett? There was a racetrack around the top of the AMC Lincoln Center in New York City, which I know, New York City isn't where everyone lives, but it's where everyone should live. So this is important for everyone.
Yes, I did not know this. I'm currently obsessed with this information. I want to go there tomorrow and investigate. I do know that the AMC Empire 25 in Times Square has a bunch. I think there's like a track situation. There's a balcony situation. There's a bar in the main lobby that they don't use. That's on like a floor above. And I am constantly to nobody. I go to movies by myself, so I say this to nobody. I'm always like, they got to do something with this. They got to open these. They got to open these doors because I'm assuming the Lincoln Square track isn't accessible. Like you couldn't just leave the IMAX screening of Beau and Afraid and take a lap and come back.
I wish you could, and I think it would be so great if we all decided to run a marathon together and exclusively trained only at movie theater tracks. So it'd have to be the 25, the Empire 25, if that exists, the one at Lincoln Center. We would have to do all of our workouts there and eat all of our meals there as well.
And we should run our charity that we run on behalf of should be Cineworld, you know, the owners of Regal. That should be who we
think of the theater owners, you guys.
Yes.
Think of the theater owners. The billionaires. Yes. Think of them.
We should all run the New York City Marathon in November, exclusively training at AMC tracks, and all proceeds should go to the corporate owners of Regal. I think that's a great thing for all of us.
I've heard of Brittany runs a marathon, but Brett, Pat, and Clayton run a marathon for Cineworld.
Amazon, get on that.
You know what? And they're putting stuff in theaters, so that baby would go straight to theaters.
So, guys, let's get into, before we get into the big new horror movie that rose near to the top of the top 10, let's take a look at some holdovers from last weekend and finally settle a slight disagreement Clayton and I had last week. We'll breeze through this. So last weekend,
we'll breeze through this. I love this.
Set aside 10 to 20 minutes.
If this was the other way around, there'd be crow being served in like several ways. Like here's a foam that's crow to start out, and then here's some crow poppers for your appetizer, and then here's a main course of crow. That's what you would be doing. But no, since I'm right, then this is just going to be a breeze past.
Can I just quickly set the table and then we'll move on? So, of course, the last weekend
will the table be set with Crow?
That Renfield,
Russell Crowe, maybe
Russell Crowe, the star of The Pope's Exorcist, Renfield. They both opened the same weekend. I made the case that they did not really overlap too much in audiences, that they did not quote unquote cannibalize each other. Clayton, of course, said that either of them, if they would have got the weekends to themselves, would have made more money. I disagreed. And you played this on your weekend preview, which I was absent for. I was on assignment. But then, Brett, remind everyone what you said on your great podcast, The New Flesh, in terms of Renfield and Pope's Exorcist opening the same weekend.
I mean, I think the very first thing I said on the episode is welcome to The New Flesh podcast, because The Pope's Exorcist and Renfield are cannibalizing each other at the box office. We are going to cannibalize. We're going to do the same thing on the episode and cannibalize the episode with both movies at the same time, which we did.
Okay.
And you were kind enough to let us use that intellectual property, which is your podcast.
Did you clear that with my team in advance?
Well, Pat said that I had the okay, so here we go. Now, Pat, did you get me into some sort of legal situation?
I did not appear on the episode in which you used that intellectual property, so that is a YP and not an MP in terms of any legal proceedings. But basically,
we'll be hearing from my Pope's Exorcist's attorney.
Okay.
So
we can table that for later. That's okay.
That's the sequel. It's the Pope's Exorcist attorney.
One of 199 sequels. I don't know if you saw this movie, but it has the most aggressive sequel pitch I've ever seen in a movie. It's fantastic.
Wow.
Sorry if that's a spoiler alert. I kind of dropped that on everyone unbeknownst that it wasn't coming. But yes, at the end of the Pope's Exorcist, there's kind of a classic sequel tease where like the Pope's Exorcist gets into a room and there's some shadowy figure who's been like, giving him assignments the whole time. And it's classic sequel stuff where he goes, well, there's more stuff for you to do, Mr. Pope's Exorcist. But this one specifically goes, sir, we've highlighted 199 sites for you to visit.
That's
and then yeah, it's incredible.
Wow.
It's an incredible call.
So they didn't have a great one that they could highlight as like, this will be what gets everyone excited for the next movie. You know, famously, they didn't have the end of Batman Begins where they show the Joker's card and everyone's like, oh,
Right.
great, that's the next movie. Instead, their thing was like, we have no single pitch for what the next movie will be, so let's just pitch there's unlimited sequels.
Yes. They're just saying, if you guys enjoy this, there will be more. I was really disappointed that it didn't end with like a James Bond-esque card that said like the Pope's Exorcist will return.
Will be, yep.
It's a bummer, but it felt like it did anyway in spirit.
The thing with, and you talked on your great podcast, The New Flesh, about how The Exorcist is a classic movie that has spawned nothing but mediocre to bad versions of these exorcism movies. The only card you could play at the end of The Pope's Exorcist is throw down a card and say, next up, it's the demon from The Exorcist.
Yeah, like Pazuzu's in it.
Right. Like, and that's not a famous, like, I don't think anyone really off the street knows that name the way they would know Joker. So there's just no great IP within the Exorcist format other than just saying, remember that one Exorcist movie that everyone likes and is good.
Yeah, I would probably, if I heard Pazuzu, I would probably mistake it for Joe Azuzu, which I think would be really awesome if he got possessed. That would be great.
Yeah.
David Leisure, I think his name was.
The Pope's Exorcist, in its second weekend, is now up to 14.9 million. Dropped 63% the second weekend. I personally don't see this ever getting a sequel that would get us Russell Crowe. I mean, I could see it being a straight to DVD sequel with a knockoff actor. But what do you think, Brett?
Well, I would have to check the archives here and see what the budget on this movie was. I'm assuming it was fairly small, probably under 20, because if you were to flip over to the international box office for this movie, this is one of those cases where Sony actually opened this abroad before they opened it here. They actually didn't screen it for critics here in the US, really. They screened it for critics in the UK, and it's doing, like, it has 37 in the international box office at the moment. And I think it's been out for, I haven't checked, but probably an extra couple weeks. But it's basically sitting at 52 worldwide, which isn't great, but like it could hang in there. I don't know what the next few weeks look like for the Pope's Exorcist, but there's a world where it skates by enough for us to get the Pope's Exorcists or the Pope's Exorcist Attorney or whatever we said.
Wow. I mean, if they kept that budget at 15 or less, then
I'm reading it's
possible.
18. Google's telling me 18. So it's kind of right in that wheelhouse.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to if Russell Crowe is just looking for a franchise, which I'm sure he wants to have a job booked every other year, and if they could afford his quote.
Where's Unhinged 2? That's what I'm saying.
Well, I think that has to do with maybe Solstice Studios not being a going concern anymore.
Yeah, it's probably all. Yeah, COVID was a strange time at the box office. Unhinged was. Talk about Unhinged. I drove to New Jersey to go see Unhinged in theaters in its opening weekend because theaters in New York were not open yet.
Did you wait in a hardtop theater or in a drive-in?
Oh, hardtop. This was like the first weekend of theaters opening again. And I went in there, and there were all two or three of us had a great time with Russell Crowe as Eric Cartman in Unhinged. It's a very interesting film.
So respect his authority.
Yeah, damn
Clayton
straight.
and I did famously see Unhinged at a drive-in that year, which was
feels
both
right
because
he does a lot of driving in that movie. He's like really a lot of shots of him angry behind a wheel, you know?
Yeah. You kept wanting the drive-in to pull off the trick of driving a giant truck through the screen at you. You know, have some old cars that you could just run over at this drive-in. That would have been great. But the budget wasn't there in COVID times for this movie to do that kind of stunt.
Isn't it? It's interesting that Pope's Exorcist, an $18 million movie that had much less ad spend than, say, something like Renfield, which was Universal they spent what on that movie? Isn't the number on that like 65 or something?
60,
65 plus ample fucking marketing, like tons of marketing. And it bombed. It's like there's no way to spin Renfield other than it bombed. It's continuing to bomb at the moment. It is bombing in the theater right now. That does not have a caveat where I can say, look at the International. It's like, no, the International's $4 million. This movie has not cracked 20 million yet. And it will have trouble doing that.
In its second weekend, Renfield is now at $920 per theater average. That is a disaster. That is a total. I mean, listen, Clayton and I last week on the show, we love Nicolas Cage. I'm sure he's awesome in this movie.
He is awesome in the movie. It's very frustrating that the movie around his terrific performance is such a mess. It's very clearly cut to shit, like cut to ribbons. Like there's narration thrown on the beginning that feels wrong. Scenes just kind of like fade to black. It is very truncated in that weird way. That I don't know if you saw Cocaine Bear. I also felt that about Cocaine Bear, and it's the new Universal special. 93 minutes, please. That's their new motto.
It's a great. I saw you had a great tweet about this several weeks ago, where you claim to be the guy at Universal who cuts every of their movies to be 90 minutes, and we all thanked you. That was a great tweet. So that leads me to let's talk quickly about before we get to Evil Dead, the state of 2023 horror does seem to revolve around these quasi horror comedy-esque Universal B movies. There have been obviously horror movies, but at the box office, it's your Cocaine Bears, your Violent Night open the end of December.
Yeah.
You've got your Megans, which are movies that will qualify as being covered on the new Flesh, but are obviously not Evil Dead type big horror movies. But those seem to be working until Renfield. Renfield's the first of these that has not been a success this year.
And yes, and I would chalk that up to that movie being like doomed from conception. It's just like Renfield was never going to work as, Universal is Universal Monsters, right? We were all like, why don't you tap your, storied history of Universal Monsters and make stuff? They tried with the Dark Universe, The Mummy, Tom Cruise, failed. That led to, God, what did that lead to? Sorry, my cat is like gnawing on the door or something, and it distracted me.
No,
I mean, your cat probably knows, but it just is not able to say, which is such so sad.
The Mummy failed, and then we got Lee Wannell's The Invisible Man, right? Like a new auteur-driven, like, let's get filmmakers do their own thing, and we all thought that was going to be the model. And then suddenly they're like, new idea. What about 3 different Dracula pitches? And they're all kind of goofy. Or one of them is, what if Renfield was the lead, which is like, people used to make fun of Iron Man and Guardians of the Galaxy as like characters that aren't, A-list characters, and there's no way those are going to be hits, and they were hits. So I think that was the thinking behind like, oh, we're Universal, we can make Renfield a movie that like Renfield above the title, we'll sell it. And they fucking sure tried to. They spent the money on the movie and on marketing, but the movie was just like, it has no idea what it wants to be. It's like a comedy, like the idea of Renfield being like a comedy about Dracula's relationship with Renfield through a modern lens, right? Where it's like he realizes it's a toxic codependent relationship, and there's like a seed of a good idea there, but the movie sprints away from that idea and is like an action comedy starring Aquafina about a corrupt police force in New Orleans. It's just like a mess. So it's completely just the wrong. It's just confusing. It's mostly confusing. But yeah, that movie underperforming has more to do with the fact that I think everyone agreed when that trailer came out, like, oh, this looks bad. Like, why would you make a movie with Dracula, Nick Cage's Dracula, as the selling point, and the movie's called Renfield? It's just very confusing. Like, I know a lot of people who thought he played Renfield because, or like Nick Cage played Renfield. Because why wouldn't you think that?
Yeah, he's the bigger star of the two. No offense to Nicholas Hoult, but he's
no offense to Nicholas Hoult, who is one of our greatest twerps on film, and he's doing great stuff lately in Renfield and The Menu, and plenty of other twerpy roles. The Favorite. I'm trying to think of what other stuff. But Renfield is just one of those concepts that it's like one of those spec scripts that sells, and you're like, really? Like that's what you want to make? Like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's just confounding to me.
Well,
The
Robert
movie's a mess.
Kirkman, didn't
Yeah.
Robert Kirkman come up with the story? So I feel like that he gets a story credit. So Robert Kirkman probably was, he's a guy that's made a lot of money for a lot of people. And they were like, this guy might know what he's talking about. And so I think probably what happened, and I don't know, this may come out, he had this story idea and then it just went wrong because they just took it in a wrong direction, like you said.
Yeah, it's there's like an edit, in the editing room, there might be a version of this movie that I think is fine versus like pretty bad. But that's the problem with this movie. It was always going to top out at okay. What is people going to go like, oh yeah, my favorite film of last year was Renfield? Like it just seemed like the bar was never set very high for that one, and I cannot. It's like it's one of those things where you're like, someone at Universal should lose their job over this one. Like, who the fuck thought this was a good idea? It's one of those movies where I can't imagine people showing up on set every day to make it. Like, I'm like, you guys all showed up every day, huh? And you shot that movie. It just feels so strange that no one said anything the whole time. Like, this isn't working, you guys.
If you see something, say something, man. I mean, honestly, even if it's a Hollywood set, a subway station, whatever, man, say something.
So true.
I guess the one saving grace is the person who is responsible for moving Renfield forward also might have been the person who made Cocaine Bear happen. And I think none of us like that movie, but it was a success. Universal is right now 3 for 4 in terms of their last, these
100%
premise movies that,
hey,
cost
more power
30-ish
to
million.
I appreciate it, and I don't know if you're aware. In addition to Renfield, we've got Voyage of the Demeter, another Dracula movie where Dracula's on a boat. It's a road movie, you could say. And then we've got the Ready or what are they called? Not the Ready or Not guys. Well, that is what they are, but they're the Radio Silence guys, the guys who did the new Scream movie. They just sold something to Universal or are signed on to do a script that's already there that's called Dracula's Daughter, where some group of criminals kidnaps a girl and it turns out to be Dracula's daughter. So Universal all in on not just B movie concepts, but specifically all in on Dracula at this moment, and no word on what happened to the Wolfman or what happened to the Invisible Man sequel that was rumored and all these other projects. It's pretty confusing to me, actually. But
before we get off of this, I think that one that is shocking to all of us is that, and I think it's just one of the, listen, COVID had a lot of victims, and one of them was the Invisible Man franchise. And that movie coming out when it did, it probably gets to over 100 million domestic if the pandemic never happens. And
did it not get pretty close to that? I feel like it. I mean, the story was like that movie did very well, even in spite, like it was the last thing to do kind of. Oh, it did 64. Okay,
you're right. It did. I think that was
100. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
But
you're
I think
the box
it was
office
on.
Boy, excuse me, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm
out of line. On that pace. No, listen, you're hashtag horror lifestyle. So this is this is our perfect nexus point.
Yes,
but that definitely is a movie that. The $100 million, whether it's an arbitrary mark or not, it just is that magic moment if you follow the box office. And if that movie crosses that in a mythical April of 2020 where there is no pandemic, we've got a date for Invisible Man 2 on the calendar.
You know what number?
Belief, and I'll go to the grave with that.
There's a number I want to see that I don't think they give these numbers out. Like I want to know how many people, what's the revenue of the premium on demand for specifically that movie, which I feel like was the first one that they were like, hey, COVID just happened. This movie's been in theaters for 2 weeks and theaters are closed. Let's put it at home, charge people $25, let them watch it. That had to be massive for them. They had to make tons of fucking money on it.
We got numbers for Trolls, the Trolls sequel. That was the one that we got PVOD numbers for. But you're right. I mean, Invisible Man, that movie probably did Boffo Streamo. It had to have, because that was a movie that everybody wanted to see, and then they weren't allowed to, or they couldn't because the theaters were closing down. it's truly the only movie I think that can claim that it got its knees cut out, really, because most of the other movies coming out around that time were not going to do well. Like Bloodshot was not going to be a hit.
Yeah.
And the fact that it got cut off by COVID is just kind of like, that movie was not going to do Bafa Bobo.
I also would argue Onward was never going to be a Pixar.
No, 100%. Thank you for
you're
saying
in the right
that.
place. Yeah.
History, that movie was DOA before COVID, and listen, that's so funny.
That's the last movie I saw before theaters shut down.
It pushed Pixar's kind of descent a little bit, kicked it down the road a little bit because it had something to cover up why it was a failure. That movie, if there had been 3 or 4 more months before COVID hit, that movie would have failed. We would be looking at another movie that made less than Good Dinosaur or maybe on par with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So
and that was like the start, not to get on a tangent, but like, I cannot believe what Disney has done to their theatrical business since COVID. Like it some point went from negligible to actively destroying it. Like I think the turning point was Turning Red.
Yes.
We probably litigated this at the time.
Oh, I would say at this point, what Disney has done to Pixar qualifies as being #horror lifestyle. That is how bloody and disgusting it
like
has
Elemental
been.
Feels like a bomb waiting to go off too.
100%.
Like not quite on Onward level, but like they've made Disney Plus their whole thing. Like no one, I can't imagine people going to see a Disney movie anymore. It's
Inside Out again. It's just they just are remaking their movies now, and it's
specifically why that one doesn't feel like it's going to break through. But maybe it could very well. Encanto was huge for them. That wasn't Pixar. That was just Disney, right?
No, that was just Disney.
Pixar is starting to feel like an Asylum films level production company.
What are they doing? I mean, Luca straight to streaming. Is that right?
Yeah.
There was another one too.
Over there.
I thought there was 3 or 4. It was like unbelievable. The amount.
It's a total disaster.
Soul went straight to streaming.
What are they doing?
But here is a franchise that is clearly, if not on the rise, it is as stable as a franchise gets. Let's talk about it. Evil Dead Rise. Guys, it debuted this weekend. And coming into the weekend, the final sort of prognostications, the estimates that we were getting out there were $13 to $18 million. That is what the predictorati were saying for this. Now, I couldn't be on our BO Boys weekend preview episode on Friday. Clayton covered. I heard, Clayton, you were predicting 19 or 20. You thought that the estimates were low. And guys, this came in for the weekend at $23.5 million. So, Brett, let's start with you.
Yeah.
The Evil Dead franchise, is it maybe more successful, not creatively? I mean, listen, Clayton and I are not critics, Brett is a critic, Good, they are. But creatively, obviously, the Raimi films are just better movies than the 2013 remake, than this movie.
Yeah.
But box office wise, $23.5 million. This is incredible. So, Brett, talk to where we are right now with Evil Dead, with this franchise, how Rise sat for you. Go for it.
Rise, the very interesting thing about it is it's the same story that happened to Smile, where Smile was a movie that was supposed to go straight to Paramount Plus. That was the plan the whole time. I think it was the CEO of Paramount watched it at home and then immediately called somebody at the company and was like, put this shit at test screenings. We're going to put it out theatrically. We have to. And
was that Brian Robbins?
It was the director of films such as the Shaggy Dog remake. But of course, Varsity Blues is a better pull than that. I looked at his Wikipedia page earlier today because his name came up and during this anecdote. But so Smile, they tested it. The testing agreed that it should be in theaters. They made this $17 million movie like a tentpole campaign thing for them. They spent $50 million to market it, and it worked, right? That movie made $200 million plus worldwide for a it's being called, I don't know if you saw this article, and I forget where it was, Hollywood Reporter or something. It was a breakdown of it and why it was the #1 most profitable movie of, was it last year, 2022?
Wow.
Like $101 million profit off that movie, from like, the theatrical, the streaming deals, and the VOD, all that stuff.
So more than Black Adam.
Yes, definitely
Yes.
more than Black Adam.
The Rock is getting the financiers to check on that, Brett. But for now, we'll assume your math is correct.
Yeah, for sure. So Evil Dead Rise is kind of the same situation where it tested really well and it was supposed to be an HBO Max thing. And this was at the time when our boy Zaslav showed up and was cutting everything and making everything a streamer instead of a theatrical release. And this was one of maybe two things I can think of. And I have the other one handy because I had to go screen it at their offices because they didn't screen it anywhere else. But they put two movies from HBO Max that were supposed to be on HBO Max into a theatrical thing and pushed them down the line. The first one was House Party, which should have stayed on HBO Max. Honestly, it was heinous, very bad movie.
I fell asleep after 20 minutes of it, but I did give it a try.
It's very, very bad. And then Evil Dead Rise, which it worked out. Right? It had a $23.5 million opening. Not to toot my own horn, if you listen to my other podcast, Roger Ebert and Me, which is a imitation of / tribute to Siskel and Ebert, where we review every movie every Friday that comes out. I predicted this exactly. It was obvious to me that it was going to do over 20, despite the prediction being 15 to 20, because horror always wins at the box office. How many times can we have this story? It's like the same. It's the same thing with, like, I feel like blacklead films always get, like, at the box office, always like, oh, this movie overperformed. It's like, it didn't overperform if your tracking was in line with how these movies always do. And I feel like that's what's happening with the Evil Dead Rise tracking and stuff. But I get why you'd rather track it. You rather the studio rather put out tracking to the press that says it's lower and then overperform than the other way around. So I get that.
But that 13 million to 18 was absurd.
Yes. Evil Dead Rise, 23.5. What did the Evil Dead remake make in 2013?
I think 25 million. Yeah.
So that's so interesting. It's about the same, but like you have to take inflation into account, so it's not even as good as that. But it's a different theatrical landscape now, right?
Right. And I think that Evil Dead 2013 remake really, and I forget where Ash versus the Evil Dead falls in this timeline, if it had already been on TV before that, or
it's after. It's after.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that Evil Dead 2013 really was played up as a, hey, we're finally doing it, and even though in a way that this Evil Dead Rise now is like, hey, we're doing it again. And it's been 10 years, but it's not as big of an event.
I don't even know how many mainstream audiences at the time in 2013 were aware of Evil Dead as a franchise and what it was. The Cell wasn't, I'm sure The Cell it's a remake of a movie that but the real Cell that's all over the poster. I actually had this poster in my college apartment because I worked at a movie theater over the summer and I would always take posters. It was just the words, the most terrifying movie you will ever experience. Was the entire marketing campaign for that movie was, you will not believe how fucked up this movie is. And like, it delivered on that promise in terms of like, it's just buckets of blood and stuff like that, and mutilation and memorable gore, licking the knife, or
razor blade,
yes. And the electric knife, the fucking chainsaw, ballet, fucking raining blood. It delivered on that, but this one is definitely more tied to the franchise and like has a lot of Easter eggs and pays homage in ways that we're not going to review it on this podcast, but like in ways that will work for some and won't work for others. But as a pure horror experience, like, hey, let's go out on Friday night and go see a horror movie. I think Evil Dead Rise 100% delivers on that. And I was surprised to see, you guys talk about cinema scores on here a lot or ever?
We do.
Yeah.
Do you have the cinema score handy there?
Yeah. So Evil Dead Rise had a B, which is pretty good for a horror movie. And horror movies famously like languish in the C's, I feel like. And Evil Dead 2013, C+.
Yeah.
So like this, it's interesting to me that this would track as more audience friendly. But you know, cinema score is more a value of like, did the marketing get the right people in there? And you know,
I could understand that because I think a strength of this movie, and I did see this film opening night, is that it does deliver what the trailer was pushing, which is it's going to take place in a apartment building and not a cabin, and the mom, it's going to be a lot of mom stuff, and it really does deliver. The movie does a great job of having this mother and aunt character be the hook for this movie. So I do think audiences didn't come away surprised at what was in the movie, which is always, like you said, that's the low cinema scores is more the disconnect than it is even the quality of the movie. It's just like, did we go in there thinking it's one thing and then it's the other? And I think Evil Dead Rise did a great job of having a hook. You know, it wasn't just we're going to the cabin again and here's new teenagers. That version probably does pretty poorly because it doesn't have the, you know, the juice that the 2013 version did. I mean, of at least like, hey, this is the first time we're remaking it.
Right. And this one, hey, they cut a great trailer for Evil Dead Rise, and it was one of those viral situations where like I feel like everyone saw it and was talking about it or knew what it was. And I think the mother it's interesting that these remakes both are like very modern and of their time, and that like they're both about trauma. They have to be about something. 2013 is about addiction. This one's about motherhood. Where like to me, Evil Dead is like the last thing you want to start grafting that shit onto. So like that's why I kind of reject this inherently, even though I admit that the movie works on its own merits, but I still am like tutting it a little bit. I'm just like I don't know if I needed them to be like doing the swallow your soul stuff but played serious. It's just like it seems wrong to me.
The Dead Eights have some range.
The Dead Eights have range.
Yeah.
It is funny though that such an integral part of these Evil Dead movies, and the reason why people go back to them over and over again, is Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
And the fact that the two times they've reconfigured these movies into something different and modernized them, they've completely eliminated that sort of element. And I think it's because, I mean, he's so hard to replace. And so who are you going to find that's 25 years old that can be Bruce Campbell? It's impossible.
That's what we end up talking about. That's what we end up talking about in the new Flesh is like fool's errand to try to make this, because no one's like, you're going to get the people like me who are mad that it doesn't have Bruce Campbell and will argue that there's no one who could replace Bruce Campbell.
It's
like, it's like a flawed premise. Like you can't do it in a way that will please everyone. I'm totally with you on that. I think it lacks the Bruce Campbell, but hey, the Bruce Campbell show exists for 3 seasons. It's pretty fun. It has the practical cheap gore. And it's out there on Netflix for the next 6 days before it disappears forever. So.
Which is insane. That is so, I just don't get, I mean, Netflix again.
But it'll be Tubi or Pluto TV's gain, because I imagine that's where it will end up.
Yeah, the future of streaming is just pay cable or basic cable with commercials. Actually,
yes,
your Plutos, your freebies, absolutely. These things, I watch a lot of Pluto. I watch way more Pluto than I would like to admit. But
streaming service of the people.
It is exactly, and I'm of the people, as you know, salt of the earth.
And there may be enough content, maybe not after this movie, but at some point enough content for an Evil Dead channel on Pluto TV, because they got the series. They got now
that's right
5 movies.
24/7 Price is Right, 24/7 Evil Dead. I love it.
I think in our lifetime we will see that on Pluto TV. But coming off of this Evil Dead Rise, like you said, it was going to be a straight to HBO streamo, and instead it's a win. If we're talking about
box office stuff, it's definitely a win.
I mean, I think that horror movies, you really could make that judgment, I think, after the opening weekend or the second week, because of course this is going to fall off a cliff in the next couple of weeks.
Sorry, go ahead.
I don't think it's going to be Smile, but I also don't think it's going to be a Renfield for sure.
it opened like 1 million more than Smile, but will absolutely gross like half the amount Smile did.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting always to think about. But yeah, I mean, right now, factoring in international, which did like 16, Evil Dead Rise is sitting at 40 already. And the budget for this one is rumored to be between 15 and 20. Is that what we said?
Oh,
it's like 19 or
awesome.
something.
Yeah. So like this is already a hit, and we're going to. I saw Bruce Campbell say the plan is, to do one of these every couple of years instead of every 10 years if this does well, and it already did. And that Sam Raimi and Ivan Raimi for the first time have like sat down and made like a Bible for future writers and directors to come on, and like what there's like a general layout for what they would do in other ones. So I'm like, even though I wasn't the biggest fan of it or anything, that's the nature of horror fandom. You go see something, you go, that was okay, and you go, I can't wait for the next one. Let's go. I hope it does well. Right. And that's how I feel.
It's where we're at with the modern Scream series, which is, it is, of course, not the first two movies, but for what Scream has evolved into, give us one fun every year or so.
I'm so on board. I'm delighted that movie's at like what, over 100 domestic, and
highest domestic grosser of the series.
Yeah, and worldwide it's like inching towards 175. Yeah, great, terrific numbers. I'm surprised we haven't seen a Scream 7 announcement yet. I'm sure that's held up by the fact that Radio Silence just signed on to do that Dracula thing. I bet the Scream people are like, fuck, what do we do?
Right.
Yeah. I bet what happens is Radio Silence produces another one, new director for 7, comes out next year. That's my prediction, but they haven't announced anything yet, which is surprising.
Yeah.
I think I agree with you. I think that's what's happening is the machinations are going on where it's like, okay, who do we have in line to do this that we trust, that it's not going to make fans be like, oh,
I'm trying to think of who I'd even want for that. That's tough. Like a Ty West or something would be like an amazing get, but like I feel like he wouldn't want to do that. I don't know.
Ty West, and he's on such a roll now with X and Pearl, and
making X films only.
I mean, Pearl is one of my favorite films of the last 10 years, I think.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Could the next Scream movie be the get back on the right box office track move for Ari Aster? Could, coming off Beau is Afraid, he's like, all right, let me right the ship, just get a quick hit in there, and Ari Aster directs a Scream movie.
The funniest thing I saw him say on a Reddit AMA was that he wants to direct a Don't Wake Daddy movie, like an adaptation of the board game. Which, if you think about it from Ari Aster, I'm like, that would be the most fucked up thing on earth if you made a Don't Wake Daddy movie. Like, what would that be?
That's an amazing idea. I would definitely buy a ticket for that.
Hasbro, Mattel, whoever it is, make that happen. Come on.
And that is a way for a Ari Aster type director now to get $100 million budget. He'll be able to do that if he does as a Don't Wake. Listen, they have been trying to make Don't Wake Daddy.
On Don't Wake Daddy. Ari Aster gets final cut on that.
If he gets the budget to 95 instead of 105, then they give him final cut. But that is a way for him to make that side. They've been trying to make Don't Wake Daddy for 30 years now. So So
I heard the Safdie brothers are doing a Kerplunk movie, so that's probably why.
Gritty.
Yeah, gritty Kerplunk.
I'm very excited about this Evil Dead Rise. I think we got to give, you mentioned him before, but our man Zaz, David Zaslav, he put this in theaters, and he came in
broken clock, right twice a day situation.
Well, it was an interesting strategy where basically he looked at the HBO Max whatever movie slate and said, it's either going in theaters or it's going into the gravesite, and it was like, I'm going to take Evil Dead and Magic Mike and House Party, and those go to theaters, and Batgirl.
Oh, I forgot about Magical Michael. Thank you. Magical Michael's Last Dance.
I mean, Evil Dead,
Magical Michael extra large.
Yep. And this is the first one that was a clear out and out success at the box office. And obviously Batgirl.
Why was that? Because Magic Mike, no promo.
No
House
promo.
Party,
no promo.
No promo.
No
Dude,
promo.
Right? What was Evil Dead Rise? Promo.
Hella promo.
Yeah.
That's something that I'm sure we talked about last time I was on, because it drives me fucking crazy that movie studios like will not market something and then be surprised it didn't make any money. Because that's like if we want to transition right into the Covenant, that's a perfect example of one.
Yeah, let's do it. Jake Gyllenhaal. What are we gonna do with Jake Gyllenhaal? What are we gonna do with him? Where does he fit in as a modern movie actor?
He fits in perfectly on Hot Ones. I gotta say, really great episode of Hot Ones to promote this movie. Last week.
That's unfortunately though the plight of a lot of modern movie actors is their best showcases being on an internet talk show.
Yeah,
and
it's
Jake
a bummer.
Gyllenhaal is in that spot. He's a guy who obviously you're fine with seeing in a big Marvel movie, as a side character, as a villain, but he is obviously past the point of being someone who could carry a movie as the reason to go see the movie at a blockbuster level.
Well, yes, I agree with you 100%. To go back to, we're talking about the marketing and the lack of it, and the Warner Brothers situation, specifically Magic Mike. If you look at the Magic Mike box office for the other ones, it is let's talk about like Disney being negligent with their product and turning red and stuff. Like Magic Mike made $170 million worldwide. Magic Mike Extra Extra Large made $123 million worldwide, and Last Dance barely made 55 or something. They completely mismanaged the situation. There was little to negative awareness that this movie even existed. Like people in my life who love Magic Mike had no idea it was coming out. It was a complete whiff, and I think that is true also of The Covenant. A movie that I wasn't aware of at all, except my podcast co-host. Every now and then, film critics who are more film criticky than I, who actually get, make a living doing it and stuff. Occasionally, they will get invited to like a super early screening and they ask for your input about it and stuff. So my buddy Jesse had seen The Covenant super early and just kind of waved it off and said he didn't like it and it was bad. So I knew it existed, but didn't think much of it. And then I just never heard of it until it was like I had a screening for it and it was coming out. And we can talk about how it's a month since Operation Fortune bombed for Guy Ritchie. Just like 2 movies, but it's got to be tough to be Guy Ritchie at the moment, or I guess it's not because he's still just cranking out movies. Anyway, The Covenant. What I will say, surprisingly, really good movie. Like, that's what's surprising. That's what's really surprising to me about this is, with not even just negligible from a if you had marketed it, people would have shown up perspective, which is 100% true. But they're leaving money on the table this is like an Oscar play to me that they missed. That they botched. Like this could have been heralded. Like if you look at I'm sure the reviews are good. It's a good movie. I haven't checked Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah, it's got an 81, solid. It's definitely maybe one of Guy Ritchie's like best movies in that it's like his most restrained. Like you're not going to see any Guy Ritchie flourishes in this movie. It's just like a straightforward war movie that itself is kind of morphing from one type of war movie to another, like a behind enemy line situation, then a different type of situation. And it's about how the bureaucracy of the U.S. military sucks and is horrible to these local Afghans who are translating for us and risking their lives. And it's a movie that really makes you feel that issue. And so like the action, like the crowd I saw it with stood up and fucking cheered at this movie. Like it has that like Heartland, Middle America, oorah, jingoistic shit going on. But
you saw it in New York.
I saw it in New York and it still had that reaction. And like I think it's because the movie's really good. It's like strong, character driven. It's about the Afghan translator as much as it's about Jake Gyllenhaal. And it's about their relationship and it's about them saving one another. And it's really good. I actually really recommend this one. And I'm just bummed that I guess this is an MGM, which means it's an Amazon. I'm surprised Amazon has money. Spend the money to make money.
It's MGM via STX. So I don't know what the situation was there. Yeah. So maybe
it was a purchase, perhaps, like getting STX out of some gambling debts or whatever's going on with their finances.
But just a little bit to back you up. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Pat, but a cinema score. Okay.
Wow.
And post-track audiences gave it 92% positive and 77% recommend, right? So that is exceptional. Guys, of course, this was guy skewing. 60% showed up. 45
Guys
of those,
Richie.
but guys,
That's what we
Richie.
call ourselves. The
Yes.
guys who show up opening weekend.
Absolutely. So 45% between 18 and 34, largest quad being 25 to 34, and that's 27%. And
Me, baby.
44% Caucasian, 30% Hispanic and Latino, 10% Black, and 15% Asian.
Okay.
Right? So, I mean, pretty diverse for this sort of movie.
Imagine if people knew it existed. Imagine.
That's the thing. And well, also imagine, and I'm sorry, imagine Jake Gyllenhaal wasn't the guy in it, because I do think that people do not look at him as a must see. He is not a butts in the seats guy. So if you have a great movie like this, and he's a good actor, I'm not saying he's not a good actor, but I just don't think he's a draw for this sort of movie.
You're right. I'm trying to think of is the biggest grossing Jake Gyllenhaal movie something like, I mean, obviously Spider-Man, but like besides that, is it
non-franchise?
Is it like Prisoners, which was sneakily a hit, but like isn't? It must be Prisoners or something.
Could the one? What was the one he did with Anne Hathaway where they were both naked a lot, like 12 years ago?
No, I don't think that.
Is there any way that that sneakily is at like 58 million? Because something like Prisoners is like a $50
you're
million.
Right. Well, Love and Other Drugs was 32 domestic, 102 worldwide. Okay. Prisoners is 61 domestic, 113 worldwide.
So that's his range. I mean, unless there's something we're all forgetting, like as far as Jake Gyllenhaal's star vehicles, not just him plugged in a franchise, or something like Prince of Persia, where it made like
Day After Tomorrow was huge, but he wasn't the selling point. The effects were the selling point.
Yeah,
you can do that every time for him.
Right. I think the problem.
This can't be right. Oh wait, no, never mind. I thought this was opening weekend. For a second, I thought it was telling me that Prince of Persia opened to 90, and I was going to be like, no fucking way. I'm going to eat my hat on the air right now. Never mind.
That was a terrible bomb.
Yeah, I think that was all it made.
I think a problem for The Covenant 2 with Jake Gyllenhaal is the fact that you see Jake Gyllenhaal in a war movie, and it makes you think of other failed war movies he's been in, such as Jarhead, such as I feel
loved
like
that movie when it came out, and I wonder if it would hold up when I wasn't 15 years old.
Well, I think also that movie is spawned the 8 direct-to-video action sequels that don't have Jake Gyllenhaal.
One of my favorite examples of a movie that spawned a direct-to-video franchise that presumably has like none of the sardonic qualities that the original had, like how there's like 15 Starship Troopers sequels.
Right. And I think
it's
there's
taking the concept seriously.
Yes, like we're gonna go fight. We're gonna go fight bugs. Let's go.
It was a satire. Yeah,
it is as if like there was like Platoon for Death Patrol, and it's just a straight up action movie. You know,
I mean, there may be more. There may be a platoon.
Yeah, there may be a platoon for Death Patrol, but I think Jake Gyllenhaal.
I hear Apple's doing Schmig Platoon.
Yes.
Thank you.
So The Covenant is also one of those movies where it probably is a better play if it opens in the fall instead of this weird April spot where you can't open a real serious Oscar contender, and it's not time for like popcorn flicks, action movies.
I'm laying the blame at the hands of one Jesse Hassinger specifically. I think they screened it for critics. They heard from Jesse, the powerful host of the New Flesh podcast.
Yeah.
He said to them that it wasn't any good, and they immediately scrapped all marketing campaign for it. So it's sometimes we have a New Flesh bump. This is a situation where I think we fucked this one up.
The opposite.
Okay.
Through no fault of my own.
Dang.
Jesse is not here to defend himself, so
Perfect.
It is his fault, and that'll be how it goes.
That's
I mean, it's half your co-host's fault, but also half Jake Gyllenhaal's fault for not being enough of a draw at the box office these last 15 years.
I'm sure you guys are sick of talking about Mario, and that's why we skipped over it.
But can we talk about
No, we're about to talk about it. We're about to talk about it.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say.
Good segue.
Thank you. For 1 second, I was going to say, what What on earth are those 21 theaters doing that decided to drop Super Mario Brothers this week?
I know. Who
What
knows?
the fuck is going on there?
You know,
I
I
would
think
love
it
an
had to
audit.
be yeah, some sort of fire maybe. I do think it might have just
One
been
theater
like
burned down that had
oh
21
yeah.
screens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was a collapse. There was like a collapse or something. That had to be what it was.
I'm glad it didn't affect the bottom line for the movie.
It could be that there were a few theaters that like we are selling too much candy and we're running out, and as a way of keeping ourselves from running out next weekend, let's get rid of the Mario.
You know what? I
screening.
think you're right. I think they're gonna actually, because once they get the candy, I think you're gonna see next week a plus 21 again. I think they're
Plus
gonna come
21,
right
yeah.
back. They're gonna come right back.
Yeah, we got the Mike and Ike's in. Let's book Mario again for those theaters. We could fulfill orders. I mean, listen, Super Mario. I know on the new Flesh, you try and keep everything that you talk about, that you review, horror lifestyle, horror adjacent. I listen every week. I have not heard a full-on Super Mario Brothers review on the new Flesh. At this point, is there any way you could squeeze this in, because it is such a phenomenon? Is there any angle? I know Wario, spoiler alert, is not in this film. If Wario was in it, could you have made the Super Mario
If
Brothers
Wario
movie?
was in it, we would have main feeded it for sure. I do want to say there is a Patreon paywall. You have to scale the paywall to find the Super Mario episode, which feels of a piece with the Super Mario universe. It's like the princess hiding in the castle or whatever. You have to kind of get into the castle to find the Patreon episode. But we could find a way in via, Bowser's kind of like an incel creep in that movie. So that's pretty scary.
Yeah, he's a little bit Bowser, a little bit Joker now. And I mean, to the benefit of the box office, obviously. I mean, this new modern incel Joker Bowser is obviously what the people wanted.
I appreciate that that song he sings, Jack Black sings in the movie, is basically a gateway into Tenacious D for children. That's what I'm qualifying it as.
You got to indoctrinate them early when it comes to the D.
And then you got to show them the Pick of Destiny at the ripe age of, like, I feel like a 12-year-old would love that movie, honestly. I certainly love that movie, and I'm 30-something.
I might start them out with the shorts. I might show them the HBO show first. Yeah.
You could have the complete Masterworks DVD. It's a really helpful tool. I have that.
I have that as well.
It's fantastic.
Yes.
Do you think KG was able to at least get an audition for a voice role in the Super Mario Brothers movie?
I hope he's like one of the little Goomba things or something. Yeah, I would hope he found his way in there. And I think Jack's a good enough friend that I just don't know if Jack has pull at Universal, but you know what? He does now. And the sequel, KG is definitely in the sequel.
We're gonna hear some Rage Cage. We're gonna hear some Rage Cage.
Is he like Wario, Waluigi? There are some interesting characters that Rage Cage could play.
I think
those are too big.
Yeah,
those are too big.
He's just looking to get him,
like
keep
a
him on his health insurance.
Shy guy, maybe.
Yes.
Okay. Kyle Gass as the shy guy.
Yeah, just so that he's able to continue to meet his SAG dues every year. I think.
Yeah, he needs that health care. He needs that health care. Now, real quick, let's just talk this drop, 37%. 58.2. That is the best third weekend for a animated film ever.
Wow.
So this thing keeps chugging along. I mean, what more can we say about Mario? I mean,
it's just there's no movie that's going to beat it this year. Can you think of any? There's nothing that comes close to even thinking. I think it might possibly eclipse it. There's just
Fast and Furious won't. Guardians won't.
No.
Marvels won't for sure.
I mean, I think the one we've talked about a few times is if the Top Gun Maverick love is so strong.
I felt that too. Yeah, Mission Impossible could do. It's going to do very well. I do not think it's going to do that big. No,
it won't do Mario money.
No.
Yeah, and this summer is just such a talk about cannibalizing. I mean, it is just week after week after week, huge movies. It's going to be tough for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 to have a Maverick type run in this summer when there are just so many huge movies opening every week.
Yeah.
Whereas Mario right now has it has this coming weekend too pretty free and clear. I mean, it's Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret, it looks like a solid movie that critics are liking and should do
it's quite good.
well.
Yeah. I think that's going to do very well. Like, I think it's going to do well because it's a good movie, but also it's going to do well because, like, didn't all these movies that are like best-selling books, and that one's like an iconic, really old book, but like, Crawdad sneakily did really well, right? Like, it's something. It feels like something like that.
And this movie is for young girls, and there's not much that is exclusively for them at the box office right now. And I think there's a lot of bro stuff. It's a sausage fest here at the movie theaters, and I think that's going to be great. It's counter programming, and of course, wanna be boys, wanna be girls, wanna be people can all go see it. It's not just for women, but I do think there's going to be a strong contingent of women going to see this movie because, again, like Mario, it is a generational book. This is a book that 60-year-old women know about.
Right.
All the way down to 5-year-olds.
The Bloomheads are out. And
yes, she's a very beloved figure.
But even with that, you could still chalk this up as like Mario has a pretty big weekend ahead of it until the following weekend when Guardians comes out and truly gives it
kneecaps him.
Yeah, truly kneecap. Mario is gonna. It is amazing if right now we are witnessing the run of the biggest movie of the year, but that is very possible. 100%. I think the other one I'll throw out there in a similar category, and I don't think it will.
Guy Ritchie's The Covenant. I think it's
Guy Ritchie's. I'm sorry. If it has that big second weekend hold, it's got a chance. But
Mafia Mama could hang in there and make $1 million, maybe. I'm just kidding.
Listen, I've been tooting the horn of the Mafia Mama for a long time, but the Italians at the box office were doing great with Mario, with Mafia Mama.
But I think matters.
Little Mermaid, I think, is the one sneakily. Nope. I don't think it will. It does not look very good, but you can't discount those Disney classic era remakes. Look at that Beauty and the Beast total.
I mean, I remember poo-pooing The Lion King even after that, and it still did just grossed $1.6 billion. It's going to do fine.
I mean, I think Little Mermaid's going to be huge. I just can't see it beating Mario. But
no.
Real quick, because I know we're running long. I do have a question.
I won't stop talking. It's totally
not
fine.
Not at all. This is amazing. We need the state of horror. We need to know the state of horror. This is very important.
And you need
for everybody.
Me to say things like, "Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret." One of the other key marketing points is Rachel McAdams is mommy and Benny Safdie is daddy.
That's
huge.
That's huge
amazing.
On TikTok, and that's the audience that this movie needs.
Excuse me, I should have said Rachel McAdams is mother. That is what the kids say. Excuse me.
His mother. Okay,
we can edit that out and put it back in.
Well, mommy's with the maggots now.
Mommy's with the maggots now. Mother is Rachel McAdams, and daddy is Benny Safdie. Yes,
and mama's in the mafia. So mama's in the mafia. So everything's upside down and turned right side up. Now, this movie, Nefarious. We were talking about this. I don't know if you heard us. Is this a horror movie? Is this a religious horror movie? What is this movie?
Yeah, it's a sneaky anti-abortion right-wing movie that has horror tinges. It's like a guy on death row talking to a reporter movie. That's all it is. There's not really that's not true. The supernatural element is the guy on death row claims he's the devil or a demon. A demon named Nefarious. His name is Nefarious.
Okay.
Sean Patrick Flannery plays Nefarious.
Wow.
And it is somehow
that's actually a B.O. Boy scoop. No one saw that movie. That's actually a scoop.
No. Yeah. Now, I don't want to listen, Pat. You can stop talking if you want to not step in it, but I'm just so curious that I did not know that this was an anti-abortion movie.
Oh no, the movie is very sneaky about it. It's deliberate that you don't know that, I would say.
Wow. Until I get there, and that's the nefarious part of it, is that it's you watch it the whole way, and the twist is it's anti-abortion.
If you want Glenn Beck or Glenn Beck's people at Blaze to yell at you, just be sure to mention that you use the word nefarious in your tweet about this episode. They will find you and they will yell at you.
Wow.
They'll yell at us just outright
buddy
for using that word in a tweet.
If no, they will listen and find out that we made fun of it and will yell at us about it.
Okay.
My buddy Mark Dusick, who I host my other show with, Roger and me, he's been a film critic for 20-something years. MarkReviewsMovies.com, great critic. He wrote a very fair review of that movie, actually way kinder than he should have been. And the producers on Twitter were just blighting him up. And they got like one positive review, and the guy was very happy to tout it. But he was also singling out people on Twitter, which is very fun. But that's neither here nor there. The movie is atrocious.
Okay.
Now I will say I do have an interest in Glenn Beck listening to all of our Evil Dead and Mario content because this is deep into the episode.
You can bait him. You can bait him in and get him. I think you can
Interesting. Yeah, we did a little bit of production company research as we talked through this a few weeks ago.
Look at the writer. It's like the God's Not Dead guys.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So this production company is an affiliation with the production company that did all those movies. So we thought it could be religious. And I think we
called it their Dimension Films-esque shingle, that this was going to be the Dimension Films to their Miramax.
Or it could be Scary Madison to Happy Madison.
It's like, it's kind of genius for them, right? Because they've already hit that faith-based market. Like I'm sure you've talked about the Jesus Revolution that took hold of America.
100%.
$52 million or whatever it's grossed. It feels like they're taking their faith-based shit, which is a box office success, and now they're plugging in horror, which is a box office success, and trying to see if they could strike lightning at the same time. And you know what? They've made what? $2.5 million on that very crappy movie, so I think it's working for them.
Yeah, listen, it's not quite Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey level money, but it's in that ballpark.
Yeah.
You know what we should try to do? We should try to recycle our Terrifier 2 vomit picture and claim that we took that picture at Nefarious and see if that baits them.
This is what happened when at the moment when it revealed it was anti-abortion. I puked.
This is what yes.
That would make you could be the Twitter person of the main what is it? What do they used to call it? The
main character of Twitter.
The day. Yeah, you could be the main character of the day on Twitter with that one. That's a good idea.
Well, I could be just like Bean Dad.
Yeah. You could get milkshake ducked in quick fashion.
Well, we will let our incredible wannabe intern Christopher handle the fallout of all of this, and I'm sure he will do a great job at that. So,
of all our good intentions,
Christopher, prepare to deal with a Bean Dad-esque situation,
some feral hogs situation.
Yeah, who was the guy who ate the shrimp? He ate a
Jensen Karp situation.
Hot
Carl, I believe was
Hot Carl.
Yes.
So wannabe intern Christopher get some diseased shrimp ready or whatever that situation was, and
married to Daniel Fishel of Boy Meets World.
Jensen Karp. He's still got a roof over his head, so it all worked out.
He's having the best week ever.
Let's
one VH1 all of a sudden.
One last quickie I want to throw out there real quick. I feel like this is slightly horror adjacent. Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. This movie is now up to $82 million. Had a really good hold again, 28%, 5.4 million.
We should mention 4, 5, 6 are all within like the margin of error. Any of these could be number 4, I think, on Monday. Yeah, that's interesting.
It's very tight
a few times, I think.
So Dungeons and Dragons, I gotta see this because I keep hearing good.
I think you'll like it. Most people like it. I'm a stick in the mud on it, but I understand that people are enjoying it and having a good time with it. There are things I really admire about it and jokes I think are very funny, but the whole thing is just a little too much for me. But I think I was one of the biggest naysayers of this movie from like trailer drop immediately was like, this is a huge bomb. I can't believe they spent money on this. And I was wrong. I will admit, I will eat crow. I will eat Russell Crowe on that one.
You will eat Russell Crowe on it. Well, the thing is, it's in this weird box office zone of it's at 82 million.
Yeah. Is it a success or is it not? Yeah.
It's Schrodinger's box office right now. We don't know whether the box office is dead or alive, but we know it's in that box.
My prediction is, I mean, it's almost at 200 million worldwide. Like they're gonna, I think they're gonna be happy with what they made on this one and like walk away. I do not think they're gonna franchise this because I don't think it made enough for that. But I think it made enough where everyone who involved will be very happy, and then it'll just be one and done. What do you?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's pacing only 2% above what the Power Rangers movie did, which is the comp that Anthony D is for Disney D. Alessandro used in his Deadline articles, and he continues to do it.
Yeah,
It's
but what did Mendelsohn use as a comp? That's what I want to know.
There
That's a
you
great
go.
question. We got to have Mendelsohn on to talk
yeah.
about D&D. We definitely we're gonna try and get him for the Guardians around that time. Get the man, the myth, the legend on, and we'll talk D&D there. But me and Pat were saying that it's feels like there's just so much richness that you can dig from the D&D universe that it's like, are they really gonna strangle it in its crib? Because I just feel like if this movie,
it did overperform for them. Yeah,
but if it doesn't get a sequel, then it's dead. They're not
right.
going to do anything else D&D related because they haven't done anything else Power Rangers related in that universe. I mean, of course, they're doing that
Netflix thing. Yeah,
terrible looking. Oh my god! You know, listen, everybody who's in some sort of sci-fi show now, stay camera ready in case 20 years later they want to do a reunion movie. Just trust
workout regimen.
Go to the gym. I know it might be like work out, use creams, do whatever, stay away from the sun, don't drink so much. Make sure you're camera ready because you will get a chance to do a Netflix or whatever streaming service is in existence movie down the line, and you need to be camera ready because if you're not, it just makes me feel so sad.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we got our email a couple of weeks ago from Adam from the Stacks, who is very much into the D&D extended universe. And his point was that this is such a rich IP with so many successful offshoots aside from just the main Dungeons and Dragons world that he sees this as a potential gigantic cinematic universe. It's just, again, it's Schrodinger's box office because if this movie tops out in the 90s, which it probably will, maybe it squeaks to 100, is that enough to warrant a sequel? Brett, you're shaking your head.
Yeah. I mean, and just want to say for the listeners who aren't watching on YouTube, you got to watch on YouTube. I've been mugging, premium mugging this whole episode.
Yes. This is 90s Jim Carrey level face work here.
Yeah.
I mean,
the whole time. You should have seen it when he was listing the top 10. It was out of control.
So yeah, it's gonna be tough. I'm gonna predict we will get a theatrical sequel with this main cast. I just feel like they'll take their chance. I do got to see this film.
Yeah, I'm surprised you haven't. What the hell's going on?
I've got to see it. I do have to see it, and of course, Clayton must see the Super Mario Brothers movie in theaters before this run is over because it is.
Please weigh in on this, Brett. Please weigh in on this. Do I have to see Mario to report on? Thank you. I'm not a critic, huh?
Yeah, no, you're a box office pundit.
Yes, so not at a quality
you
level.
hover above it all. You don't have to. Yeah, no.
Thank you. I'm a godlike eye over all things, so I don't have to necessarily interact with them to see them.
You see them without seeing them. You know what I mean?
God has to watch every movie. That is, whether it's an Evil Dead movie, whether it is a anti-abortion horror movie, he's watching them all. And
wait, so then do I have to see Nefarious by that logic, Pat?
No, you have to see the biggest box office movie of the year, which is Super Mario Brothers movie.
This is like me when I literally haven't seen Avengers Endgame and stuff like that, like the biggest movie of all time. I haven't seen Civil War. I refuse, and I respect his gambit, and he shouldn't have to see it.
Thank you. Thank you. That's two.
This has not been settled. Brett can settle horror related.
I'm out of my
issues, but you're out of your jurisdiction here. As much as we love and respect you, Super Mario Brothers, I think this is more of a Scott Mendelsohn debate to weigh in on.
Okay.
Is there anything? Very, very, very quickly. Last thing. Brett, Beau is Afraid. This movie is a much talked about online movie. Of course, it is Ari Aster's follow-up to Midsommar, and it is in its wide release this weekend. It made a total of $2.7 million. Of course it did. Who would have thought this movie was going to make it? It's his personal film that is, of course, going to be polarizing. It's a Synecdoche, New York-esque. I haven't seen this yet, but I feel like that's the vibe I'm getting from it. And of course, this was never going to break out the way Midsommar or Hereditary did. And I'm sure everyone involved knew that.
This was A24 paying a premium tax to keep Ari Aster at their home base. That's what it is. It's definitely a negligible write-off for them. It's not going to make, I think the budget was 35, and I'm sure there's a bunch of marketing on top of it. I don't think it's going to get there, but it's going to make it'll make 15 to 20 worldwide total, probably, or something like that.
Right.
And it'll have its fans, and there's a world I can see in which Patti LuPone squeezes out a Best Supporting Actress nomination. I would love to live in that world. I think the movie is a little too strange for that world, but she's so good in it. And I don't know. It's definitely not an A24, like Everything Everywhere All at Once situation where it's going to be like a groundswell around it at the end of the year. Like, there will not be. It is very polarizing, but I think it's great. It played in IMAX exclusively in LA and New York for a week. And it has to be the weirdest movie to ever play on an IMAX screen. It was very cool to see that way. I saw it twice as I don't know. I feel like the target audience of that movie is Jews. If you're a Jew, you'll love it. Jews with anxiety, or people with anxiety, specifically.
Right.
Anybody. It's not a horror movie like you'd expect from him, but it is first and foremost a comedy. And the first the first 45 minutes are like the funniest movie I've seen in years, and then like the rest of it is also very funny but deranged in different ways. I can't recommend it enough, but it's definitely polarizing.
I definitely want to see this movie, and I totally think you nailed it. This is them. It costs us this amount of money so that he'll do his next movie for A24, and I assume Ari Aster's next movie will not be so hyper specific. They'll get him to do whether it's horror or just a, dramatic Oscar baity for him type of movie that they then feel, okay, this could actually make $60 to $80 million at the box office.
Right. I mean, both Midsommar and Hereditary are like good hits for A24. They're hits.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they want them there. They want them there hitting doubles. So they let them, go a little crazy with this one. And God bless them. That's what the studio system is for. It's one of the best. It's one of the best examples of a personal, like, one for me that I've ever seen. It's just such a great, like, someone using studio money to fund a very personal project. It's great.
Right.
Yeah. I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, it's great.
Do a double bill of Beau's Afraid and Super Mario Brothers very soon, Clayton. I think that's the way to go.
Now, how conscious do I have to be? If I go to Mario and I sleep the entire time, does it count?
I think you can sleep 60% of the movie and that'll count. I think you could definitely go in needing to catch up on sleep, and we'll let that count. We'll negotiate exact awake percentages, but that could be part of it.
I'll run around the track for a few hours and then I'll go in there and take a snooze.
Perfect. So, guys, I think we have done it. So,
absolutely.
Listen, you want to email the BO Boys, of course, the theboboyspodcast at gmail.com. We love getting your emails, predictions, so on and so forth. Give us 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. Give, of course, the new Flesh a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and subscribe if you haven't already. I mean, I feel like this is going to be a huge subscriber boon coming out of this A+ appearance on this episode. So
thank you.
Check out the new Flesh. Give all of us 5 stars. Helps listeners find all of these podcasts. We are YouTubers now, so smash that like button. There it is down there. Smash that subscribe button. Smash. is your show, Brett? Are you a YouTuber? Is the New Flesh on YouTube?
The New Flesh is not on YouTube, but my other show, Roger Ebert and Me, is on YouTube. And
excellent.
Yeah, I am. You're making. I should be on YouTube. There's no reason I'm not. So we should get on there. You're right.
Become a YouTuber, man. It's great.
Well, you're already a YouTuber. Be a double YouTuber.
I gotta be a double
YouTuber.
Two-time. Two-tuber.
And of course, follow us on social media at the BO Boys Pod, and Wannabe intern Christopher may be dealing with a vast controversy coming his way. So as he listens to this episode, just get yourself mentally, physically prepared to deal with whatever's coming at you. Follow us at the BO Boys Pod on all platforms, but I think just on Twitter.
A vast right-wing conspiracy, as they say.
As they say, big pull there, Clayton. Way to go. Brett, anything else you would like to plug regarding upcoming episodes? What is on tap for the next episode of The New Flesh? What are people going to hear?
Well, the Evil Dead Rise episode is out right now. Actually, I'm sure it comes out the same exact moment that this one drops. But we were at the end of the episode. We were vamping to try and figure out what we're doing next week, and we had nothing. But since then, I've figured out there are actually 3 new horror movies out on Friday. So we'll be covering, I believe we'll be covering The Artifice Girl, which is like a low budget sci-fi thing that I enjoyed. A movie called Zissou that I didn't enjoy that much. And then a horror movie called Clock is coming to Hulu. And I think we'll cover that. So it's one of those like weeks where there's not a lot happening. So we'll actually end up covering a few things. And there's also a giant shark movie coming out called Black Demon. But like these are very below the radar, not on box office radar because they're very low rent. So that's the kind of week it is.
but even in a week like that, it just shows horror never stops.
Never stops.
You just named 4 movies coming out. One of them's a Hulu movie. So it's a very accessible movie on a week where there's quote unquote nothing. There's a lot.
And every week there's nothing. There's like 12 on the Roger and Me show. So there's always too much. I'm drowning in film.
Wow. Yeah. Well, what a way to go, huh? Drown in film.
He died.
That's the way I want to go.
Yeah.
So, all right. I think, Clayton, we've done it. So there's nothing left to say, is there?
No, there's nothing left to say except for until next time.
We'll smell you at the box office.
Nailed it.
Nailed it.
Nailed it.
Yeah.